So first off, just summarize for the viewers at home what you guys are hoping for.
Yeah, we sent a letter representing the 5 largest school districts in the state, but actually representing all 421 districts to reinforce the fact that there is a budget surplus in Madison, and our families and our school districts are hurting, and we need some relief. We need some support, and appropriately funding public education would be a good start.
So when you talk about that increased funding, are you proposing, or I know you're not a policy maker on the state level, but like, do you guys hope it comes from that budget surplus? Are you guys looking for the money to come from somewhere specific? I guess, where do you want the money to come from?
Yeah, I'm not sure that people that aren't paying attention to politics understand that we have a budget surplus in the billions of dollars in Madison, and unpredicted an additional 1.5, potentially $1.5 billion at a time when we were told to prepare for less reimbursement for special education funding. Ideally, minimally, we would like the 42% that was promised at the start of the school year when they finalized their budget at the state level. That most recently they said it isn't going to be 42%, most likely isn't going to be. We would like to see that. But in addition, if we're looking at the broader funding of public ed, there was an example already in the state of Wisconsin by Governor Thompson back in the 1990s that increased per pupil funding based on cost of living. We would love for the legislature to revisit that.
People will sometimes point to the 400-year increase and say, well, the schools are already getting enough because, look, they locked in funding increases for 400 years. So I guess, why do you guys want more, or is it that you want to make sure that's protected, or you want more, you think you need more?
Yeah, I think that's become a political game now, that it's being used as a reason not to come to the table to even discuss what appropriate public funding would look like for our schools. The 5 of us are asking, our districts are asking, let's have the adults come to the room and have an honest conversation about what would be appropriate, because what's going on right now isn't cutting it. There's no reason why almost every school district in the state has to go to referendum year after year after year. This did not happen back when Tommy Thompson was governor, and there's a reason it didn't happen, because schools were appropriately funded.
And some people will point to declining enrollment, saying, well, districts will close schools, so they're more appropriately sized. Why is that? I guess address that counterpoint.
Yeah, I think it's not even a counterpoint, it's the reality. But that doesn't mean that expenses aren't still there. Our district alone has closed 7 schools, but we still have a funding gap. And I think that's evidence that the 17 years of not getting a cost of living increase is badly affecting our public schools.
I've also seen some Republican Assembly members show a graph that that staff has increased in Wisconsin. I don't know if it's true in your district, but staff has increased in Wisconsin over the last 10 years. Well, enrollment has stayed about the same, slightly declined. Is that true, or is there a reason to it? Is it true in your district?
I would love to see where they're pulling that data from. I could, for our district, I can say that during managing student needs following COVID, immediately following COVID, and using ESSER funds did lead to an increase in staffing. But our district and every other district that I am aware of has already reduced those positions. So I would love to get more information about what data they're looking at to say that staffing has increased. Wouldn't we want that? Wouldn't we want more adults working with kids? That's an interesting argument. I haven't heard that one yet. When we're looking at how we're going to spend our funds, it should be allocated in a way that best addresses the needs of kids. So I would expect our funding to primarily go to our staffing. We want more adults in our buildings working with kids, and if we can make that happen, we're going to make that happen. Now, at the same time, we're being fiscally responsible and we're balancing our budget. So we are making cuts. But my goodness, if we're going to spend anywhere, it's going to be on the adults.
To start, just went over it some, but the districts and the governor saying that the surplus funds, that some of them should go towards property tax relief and school funding. I think the Republican side, you guys have been a little bit more skeptical of that. Do you guys reject that notion that the funds should be allocated that way?
Well, first of all, our budgets have always made school the top priority. It is the largest portion of our state budget. And property tax relief, I tell you what, that's going to be part of what we're going to be planning for the surplus. So we certainly have some similarity there. However, it's critical that the governor be willing to remove his 400-year property tax increase that he put into place. That's a leak in the bucket, and we have to fix that leak before we add more money. And so, we have been very open to do additional funding increases for K through 12 and have done historic amounts over the last 4 budgets. So we'll continue to be open to that. But the top priority we're hearing from voters right now is property tax relief. And so before the end of this session, I expect we will have a massive property tax relief package that we'll be providing to the governor.
Sure. And you mentioned property tax relief is a big part of it. What are some of the other aspects that you guys are looking at as far as some of the surplus funds go?
Yeah, well, we have some additional investments that we're looking and discussing internally, including looking at things relating to our court system, corrections, the needs within the state. So we want to be responsible with how much we put towards property tax relief and other needs that are within the state. But certainly, education remains the top priority of our state budget every single 2 years. So we continue to make that a priority. It will be, but it's not the only need within the state. And so we're going to be looking at all different options as it relates to that. But again, property tax relief is going to be one of our top priorities down the stretch.
Sure. Okay. And that was kind of my next question, was more on the property tax relief. I know data or chart that the superintendents keep presenting to us is talking about the per pupil funding. That per pupil funding has not kept up with inflation, and it's lagged by, I think, about $3,500 over the last 15 to 20 years in the state. And they're saying, we should tie it to inflation. We should tie that number to inflation, the per pupil funding. Is that something that Republicans would consider?
Well, the first thing we have to do is address property tax relief. But I think there's some opportunity to explore those types of provisions. But let's be clear, when we haven't increased in per pupil aid, what we have done is done dramatic historic increases in other cost factors like special education. That was a focus this time around. But again, the governor has put in place a 400-year property tax increase, and that impacts on a per pupil basis. And so there are avenues for additional revenue through the existing program. Also, of course, every single school district has the ability to go back to its local voters if it needs more money. And so that's local control at its greatest. When you have a need for an issue to be addressed, if you need more funding, whether it's a municipality or a school, they have the opportunity to go to the school, go to the voters directly within their community and request those funds.
And the special ed, you mentioned the special ed increases, the major increases, those are the ones that are set to kick in next year and the year after. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're kicking in over the coming years, and including bringing high cost special education costs where the state's going to now cover 90% of those costs. And we've increased the amount over the last several years from about 25% for overall special needs up to almost 40%. So we have been increasing the largest driver of cost increases within schools, special education. That's something where we have been putting significant amount of money in. So again, every single budget, the largest increases in spending go to education. That hasn't stopped. But what also hasn't stopped is seemingly the endless request for additional money from school districts.
Sure. And also, they'll often say that that because the general state aid isn't necessarily increasing, that then that's why property taxes are being raised so much. Is that something that you would like to address? Is that true?
Well, I think there is truth that property taxes increase when school spending increases. One of the things that is also important is that schools need to be focusing on core curriculum. Unfortunately, While successful states in education are spending 70 cents of each dollar on core in-classroom education, meaning teachers, curriculum, uh, equipment, computers, many of them in the state of Wisconsin are only spending 49 or less percent of their money towards core education. So it's important that schools are putting their money where the priority should be, which is in the classroom. But many school districts are not doing that. They are below 50% in terms of the amount of money they're putting to in-classroom education.
Sure. Honestly, you pretty much answered the questions that I had for you. Are there any other things that you'd like to share during the interview?
Listen, education continues to be a top priority for both Republicans and Democrats, and that shows in our budgets. Every single budget, we do substantial historic increases. It is the largest line item in the state budget. I think we're doing the best we can with the money we have. As it relates to property taxes, I think that's a great opportunity to use some of the surplus money when we're not sure if it's going to continue into the future. That we use surplus money for one-time property tax relief. That's the type of thing that we should be doing.
Sure. Perfect. Well, thank you, David.